the Mental Health Day. We're going to talk about some rules that apply to not only you, but your furry family members too. Let's roll. Hello, everybody. I'm Rob. This is Everyday Heroes, the series that covers the educational but still fun topics of conversation. Now, in honor of a day that is all for well-being, we figured we're going to expand it to not only you, but to your pets. Now, obviously, this one here isn't going to a dog park anytime soon, but, what are you going to do? All right, but we're not going to do this alone. I call her Mom. You can call her Karen.
Just call me. Just make sure you call me.
Or just call her.
Call me.
So I put a few articles up for you guys to check out. We're going to talk about dog park etiquette because, unfortunately, from personal experiences and stories I've heard, dog parks are not always the place that people know what to do because you just assume it's a place you let your dog run free. Not so much. So we're going to pull from the AKC, American Kennel Club article. I love these guys. I watch the Westminster Dog Show every year. They do all that good stuff too. So I figured who knows better than probably them. A couple key points that they wanted to point out. While we're going to go over the rules, dog parks in general do give dogs and owners a place for their dogs to run around, do their thing, sniff, play, all that good stuff. However, young dogs or unsocialized pets should not be taken, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And of course, cleanliness, safety, and all that is still required, even though you're outside. Oh, there's Christopher. I guess he has enough of our conversation already. So dog parks are a very good thing if used correctly. I know over by you and your community, you have a set one. And many places do that now, whether you live in a community, whether you live near a park. A lot of times cities will now have a designated area for you and your dog to play. What I love is when you have the large and the small, when you have the unsocialized, socialized.
Right.
Because honestly, even though I don't recommend bringing a dog that's not used to it, if there's an area in the park that is gated off, or maybe just wander around the park, it's still good to get your dog out and at least used to, because I'm going to assume many people want their dogs to at some point be able to have some fun and play with their fellow peers. The Trust for Public Land reports that dog parks are among the fastest growing kind of parks in 100 U.S. cities. In 2019, there were 810 dedicated dog parks. Based on the number of parks for every 100,000 residents, the top 5 cities are Boise, Idaho, Portland, Oregon, Henderson, Nevada, Norfolk, Virginia, and for our neck of the woods, San Francisco, California. The only one out there that was odd to me was Boise, but apparently there's a lot of people in Idaho, so I guess that makes sense. You're going to have a lot of dogs with those people, right? And it's farmland. A lot of farmers, ranchers have dogs, so what are you going to do? Is your dog ready for that experience? So the first thing and most important thing is young dogs, unvaccinated dogs, don't bring them anywhere. I can tell you stories. I shouldn't laugh, but it's just the way people word the questions were kind of odd. But in reality, the seriousness of if your dog isn't vaccinated or if your dog is just too young, don't bring him out. On the flip side, if your dog is suffering from something or recovering from something, or let's say your dog might be in heat, also not a good idea. Think about what you would do, especially in pandemic times, right? If you aren't so hot right now, are you going to go out and join the rest of the world?
Right.
Probably not. Same thing goes for your dog. And actually, there are kitty cafes around the world as well. So in reality, too, if the kitties there aren't feeling so hot, they're probably going to take them off display. That way they don't hurt the other kitties that might be having fun.
Right.
Now, this can easily be, remedied when you do adopt your pet. Usually the first thing you'll do at the shelter is they'll give you the first set. So usually it's rabies, lepto something, and
there's now influenza is now one of the big ones, especially.
Canine influenza is one, yeah. I can't remember the other one.
Bordetella. Bordetella.
Bordetella, thank you. So most of the time, right off the bat, whether it's your dog or cat, they will give you the shots it's included. So a lot of times it's a $25 fee, and that includes the shots, the microchip, your tags, all that good stuff. However, just like we need our boosters, your dog isn't ready off the bat to go in immediately. So when you do get your pet, bring them to your vet immediately, or at least a couple days after. They'll let you know the timeline. They'll let you know when the next boosters are due. More likely than not, if you do maybe adopt a dog over the age of 4 months or maybe an older dog, not necessarily have to be that big of a deal. They probably
Right.
already have their boosters. You can pretty much go out and do what you like. However, I always recommend that if you can't bring them to the park immediately, go take them for a walk. Get
Right.
them used to the outside. Go around your backyard. Go around your block. At least they can get a taste of some sunshine, right?
Right.
So what do you do after your dog is vaccinated? Well, you still have one more hurdle to go over: obedience and socialization. I will not stress enough because it's happened to dogs that I've had, it's happened to dogs that I've seen. If you are in the situation where you have big and little mixed together, which is fine, I have no problem with it. A lot of times, though, the other people's dogs or even your own might not be so nice, or they might just be so big that they are playing. But unfortunately,
Right.
if you roll over, it's not going to be good. So, the two things that I will strongly say is obedience training. Now, this is really the basics: come, wait, sit, and your version of no or stop, whatever word you want.
Right.
We're not saying you need to have your dogs know how to run through an obstacle course at the Westminster.
That would
We,
be nice, though.
that would be nice, wouldn't it? Some parks actually have that now. You can actually take them through a course. Um, but really, socializing or I'm sorry, obedience is the basic commands. If you can get your dog to stop what it's doing and return to you, you're gold. You are good. If you know offhand that your dog probably isn't going to care what you tell him or her, probably not the best time to go. Now, on another show I did talking about how to save money on pet expenses, I talked about you doing this stuff at home. Now, I have gone to trainers. I've actually known trainers personally as well. There's no problem going to them. And honestly, if you are concerned with your ability, go to a dog trainer. Obviously, they know what they're doing. But many times, the commands of sit, stay, all that, you can do for
Right.
free at home. I know when we had dogs growing up, for the most part, we did it ourselves. I think once or twice we had a dog that we might have taken to a trainer, but that was just for.
Well, I mean, here's the reality. When a trainer works with a dog, they're really training the owner more than anything else, right? Because if we're not consistent, it doesn't really matter. So, yeah, there is that.
Right. So, be good and hopefully your dog will follow as well. All right. So, after obedience, the last thing to know of is socialization. The worst thing you want to do or be accused of is having a regressive, a reactive, or a guarding dog. Reactive just means, just like people, if you are a little on edge, you might do something by accident. Your dog does the same. Aggressive, obviously self explanatory. Guarding is usually over resources, which is why one of
Mm,
the tips we're going to go over is why you don't want to bring things with you to the park, because
right.
lots of dogs get very possessive. So, what do you do about that? That is really going to be on you. But I would say if you know, or if you even have a smidge of feeling that your dog probably isn't going to be okay with a bunch of other dogs, hold off. I would say, and actually it's kind of cool that we're by each other because we can actually use each other's dogs as bait, more or less.
Right.
For instance, we have two, she has one. Mine haven't been out for a while. So what I would probably do is go over to your place, your park with Christopher and just practice out there. Do I think my dogs are going to do anything? No, of course not. But
Right.
it's been a couple years. They haven't been seeing the sunshine in who knows how long.
Right.
It's good to practice
Well,
just to
yeah.
be safe.
And when we first moved here, because we didn't know how he would react, he's a little dog, but he thinks he's a big dog. We do
Right.
have a little dog park and a big dog park, but he does not want anything to do with the little dog park. He wants to be where the big dogs are. And he can hold his own, but it's scary because he's tiny. So I tend to walk into a dog park just with a leash, with the dog on the leash, and let him go around and smell and sniff and acclimate him to maybe one of the bigger dogs. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But
Well,
it's,
that is actually, I think, one of the tips we're going to go over. So that is a great,
oh, cool.
because there's a difference between that versus, leaving them out the door and letting them go in.
Right.
Before I go into that, though, the next part on here was, is a particular dog park good for your dog? Kind of a silly question to think about, but if you know, at least in California, there's all sorts of styles. Cesar Milan, actually, who lives out here, he lives by, I think, Simi Valley, and he uses the big ones. Now, he would recommend the bigger size for the reason of letting your dog have space to run and jump. If, however, your dog likes to take off and do his own
Right.
thing, you know, so while the question itself seems odd, take a look around. If you want to Google map it, because sometimes you can get the satellite view, check out what parks look like before you go. If you take a look at it and go, this is a good match, go bring them over. If
Right.
it turns out it might be too much, there's probably 100 more within your vicinity that you can go to.
Right.
Sometimes nowadays they do require vaccinations and your tags. So occasionally there will be quote unquote guards or people there. And if they notice your dog isn't wearing a tag or whatever, you can actually get penalized. And if you don't have your proof, you will actually be asked to leave just
Right.
because, like you mentioned, because of the illnesses, because of the aggressiveness, things can happen. So it's good. It's a little annoying when you just kind of want to let your dog play, but I understand nowadays
Right. And they
why
should
you
have their
would.
shots. I mean, it's just safer. They should have their shots and they should, you
Right, right. Okay, so let me move over to actually the Doggington Post one, because apparently that's the one that has the rules about the leash and all that stuff. So Doggington Post, I love that name. I think it's a spin-off of Huffington Post, I believe. They wrote down 12 rules to abide by when going. So, first off, when a dog is entering or leaving a park, call them away from the gate. The last type of training you want to teach them is to run to the door. Now, this is great for home as well. You don't want your dog running in the door. We actually have a sign that says, don't knock. The dogs know you're here because, God, and my head hurts after I hear that noise. But don't let them run to the gate. If you need to, hold on to their collar, pick them up, do something, but put them to the side so they don't learn to go. Number two, and this actually is where it comes in, remove your leash before the park. There's usually a double gate system. So you usually walk in, there's a little area, and then you walk into the park. This one has a couple reasonings behind it. One is safety wise. A lot of times, if the leash is long, a lot of times dogs have tripped, gotten caught, and hurt themselves in the leash because the dog ends up wrapping around items, the dog can hurt himself. Secondly, it can actually cause a problem for other dogs to pull on the leash and cause your dog to either choke or get in a situation where it is. However, if you're the only one there, or if it's maybe two dogs and the dogs don't look like they're going anywhere, you can do what my mom said and walk them in, let them get used to the area. Use your judgment as to what you think, because either or is a good reasoning to do or not do, depending. Number three, now I'm not a fan of metal collars at all, but some people use the prongs, the choke chains. If you have that, make sure to either have another collar in the car, because you don't want to put that into the dog park. Not because it's necessarily bad for your dog, but if another dog comes to go play and they want to, bite and do the whatever, that's going to hurt. If a dog chomps down on a piece of metal, you're going to have a dental bill you might be paying the owner for that. So I don't use them at all. I really don't like how it works personally. But if you have to do that, put a collar on, like a soft collar. That way, when the dogs run around, you are good to go. Number four, keep an eye on the dog at all times. I know this is hard. You want to interact with your friends when you're there. Make sure you can see your dog at any point of the yard. Now, this goes into how big the yard is, the park. If you don't think you can keep an eye on your dog in a large area, find a dog park that's smaller, because you want to be able to see all four corners. A lot of times when I did go to the dog park, I went with people I knew. Yes, you want to converse, but I always had my eyeball on mine just to make sure he wasn't doing anything he wasn't supposed to. Because last thing I want to be accused of my dog doing something it's not supposed to. Number
Exactly.
5, pick up after your dog. Cleanliness is godliness. What? Right? Just like when you're walking down the street, and a lot of places now, there's like things on the side of the sidewalk now with like dog scoop things. But there's always going to be dog waste disposal things there. Pick up after your dog. Sometimes there's even the full-on scooper, so you don't have to bend down and pick it up. You can just scoop it and dump it in the garbage. Just like anywhere else, cleanliness, niceness, politeness. If you don't want them doing it to you, why would you do it to them? Number 6, keep an eye on body language. Now, this is where I tell people to research up on your breed and your dog. Now, not all breeds act the same. Not all dogs act the same. Some big dogs can be so timid and submissive that they look fierce, and they're not. As you said, some small dogs can look so timid and whatever and end up having a worse bite than a bark.
Right.
So, if you know offhand that your dog does things that aren't appropriate, and they're about to do that right then and there, get in the way. Now, obviously, don't put your hand down there. You know that from experience. But if your dog is about to do something that you can tell, get your body into the middle. Try to push yours out. Tell the person whose dog that they're doing with, same thing. Obviously, you're not going to go whack somebody else's dog, but let them know, hey, I'm going to separate mine from yours because my dog's about to do something stupid, and I don't want your, most of the time people are cool. They might even go over and grab their dog just to help you, but just keep an eye out for that kind of thing.
Right.
Number 7, like we said before, if your dog's not feeling well, leave him at home. Why you would go to the dog park without your dog, I have no idea. But I think they're saying if you want to go to the dog park, but your dog says no,
don't go.
Just stay home. Maybe go in the backyard, play, do something there. Don't bring neutered, unspayed, or dogs in heat. Again, just like if your dog has something, those things will attract the wrong kind of attention. And while a lot of people think that's funny, it's not. And the last thing you want to end up with, So just don't do that. Leave anything that your dog loves at home. Don't bring toys, don't bring treats, don't bring food. Many places say that if you're eating something, like if you go for breakfast and you're about to walk in, you have like an Egg McMuffin, you're not allowed in there. Even if there's sign. When I was in Calabasas, people would be like, finish out there. Don't, they would yell at you.
Interesting.
Do not go in there. Because the last thing you want is that, because dog, they can smell better than we can. And if you have a yummy thing in your hand, they're like, ooh, food. And don't bring any toys for the possessive thing. You don't want to get them too riled up. Let's see. Number 10, don't go in there wearing your Sunday best. If you're about to go to, a gala afterwards, or you have a wedding to go to, don't be wearing your fancy clothes to the dog park. I don't even know what else I need to say. That's just. Yeah. Number 11. Now, this is one that I always actually thought just should be general, but apparently people are okay with it. When you bring your kids, be careful when you bring your kids. I always thought that was a very not smart thing to do, personally, because people let their kids run around, and then when the kid falls over and starts crying, they get mad at the dog owner for the dog running around at the dog park that he's supposed to be running around at. I just think that's kind of a dumb idea personally. If you have to bring your kids, that's fine. That's whatever. But if they're young, like little, keep them on your lap, keep them by you, do whatever. A dog park is for dogs. If, sometimes there's a playground next door. If you want them to go play next, whatever, they can go play, 10 feet away from the thing. I just think it's a weird mix. But if you have to, just keep an eye. And, if the dog runs into your kid, it's not the dog's fault or the owner's fault. It's a dog park. I'm just putting that out there. All right, the last one here, and this is very important, especially for places like where we live, keep an eye on your pet level of energy, heat, and panting. If your dog looks like it's about to pass out, go home, get your water, or go to the car, get your water, do that stuff. If your dog can handle a quick break and go back in, great. I'm always under the impression if I'm feeling too hot and I'm getting kind of sunstroke, I'm going to go home with my dog because he's probably suffering 10 times more than I can. So that's the general etiquette we have for dog parks. Most of it's common sense. Most of it may not be, but generally speaking, I would say if it's been a while, practice somewhere with your friends, go out, take a walk, get them back into the sun first. Then see how they act. If you are perfectly fine and you have one of those police dogs that never does anything wrong, go for it. Do whatever you want. That's cool. But if you're like most of us and you have dogs that kind of do stupid things sometimes, just keep an eye out for
Right.
them
Well, I
when.
started walking. So I started walking every day with my dog to get him acclimated again because during the summer nobody goes to the dog park here. It's just too hot.
Right.
It's just too hot. But in the morning at 6 in the morning, I'll take my little one out and we'll go take a walk. And he gets acclimated and he has friends now on the street. And he'll sniff them, and that's really good for socialization. So that's a
Yeah.
great tip, Rob, that you mentioned, is that if it's been a while since you've been at the dog park or you've never done a dog park, you can acclimate your dog on a leash, because there's such a thing as an off-leash dog park and an on-leash dog park, which it doesn't make sense. An on-leash dog park, that why is it a park then? Because then you have to be with your dog. However, if you're walking your dog on a leash and you see there's dogs, I will carefully walk over carefully and let's see if they want to communicate and do their little sniffing and licking. And it's great to socialize. So now when we're ready to start going to the dog park, and you can come, you'll bring your two little pups, we'll go to the park and I'm going to feel a lot better because he's used to now seeing other dogs on the street and sniffing at them.
Right, right. That is a good point. Yeah. So just as you would train your pet at home, just use that knowledge when you go out to the dog parks as
Right.
well. And you'll feel better about it too because you won't be so stressed and you can actually enjoy yourself and watch them run around and be crazy
Right.
as they should.
Right.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Speaking of mental health, we'll probably talk about it more tomorrow, but we have our new Minding Mental Health episode all about actually loving yourself, which is very important for mental health.
Right.
And of course, we have a brand new Ultra Universe Live on Thursday and so much more. So if you weren't able to join us live, thank you for those who were. Check us out on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Hit the subscribe, hit the bell. You can Google Karen Glasser anywhere, and that's where you'll find her, and hit the subscribes on her too. Until tomorrow, guys, have a wonderful day and continue to stay curious and give someone a great day too.